Good evening. Welcome in to our regular Monday night time slot here on State of the Tigers at powermizzou.com. Gabe DeArmond here. Jarod Hamilton going to be along in a minute. We are going to be with you every Monday night, pretty much the rest of the season, I think, barring something completely unforeseen. But State of the Tigers here, our weekly show talking Mizzou football, brought to you every single Monday night by our friend. And see, it sounds better when I can say this, my insurance agent, James Carlton. James Carlton, State Farm Insurance in Webster Groves, Missouri. You can check him out at carltoninsurance.net, facebook.com/Carlton Insurance. You can also give him a call at 314-961-4800. If James doesn't answer, somebody in his office is going to answer and have plenty of information for you. Also, if you just call James, tell him you heard about him on powermizzou.com. He is going to donate $25 toward NIL efforts. Well, you got to get a quote from him. But once you get a quote from him, then you're set. He's going to donate money to the NIL efforts, and everybody is going to be happy, and you're going to save money on your insurance. So we bring in Jarod Hamilton now. Talk a little bit of Mizzou football. We are through week one. It was a football game, Jarod, for 4.5 minutes, maybe something like that.
4 minutes exactly. 4 game minutes. 10 minutes of about real life time. That's when Murray State had special teams, offense and defense all on the field, and they were done. Now, Drink, if you ask Drink, he said 4 plays, but and I wrote that's kind of not exactly true, but
it was pretty close though.
Not too far off. But I mean, I wonder how that feels to know your whole opponent that's had the entire offseason to surprise you and be like, give it about 5 minutes.
Right. Well, and let's be honest, the whole we don't know what they're going to do. Like, I get why he said it and all that. It didn't matter what they did. Like, it just doesn't matter. They're not good enough. They can do anything they want. The talent differential was so big in that game that it simply didn't matter. Now, look, Missouri deserves credit. Came out dominated. Because there are 134, I think, FBS football teams, and 133 of them gave up more yardage to Missouri than Missouri did, and some of them played worse teams than Missouri did. So Missouri deserves credit, all that. But we're through that one. We've got another one that should be, I think, better than that. So during the live show after the game, after you had logged off when you were writing, I was talking about Buffalo, and I said, hey, Buffalo might be better than I think. They beat Louisiana Lafayette 30-13 tonight. And then I looked up, and it was not Louisiana Lafayette. It was just regular Lafayette that plays in the Patriot League, and I'm no longer impressed with that. Buffalo is not any better than I thought they were.
Yeah, we'll see what Drink has to say tomorrow as far as like what to expect. But earlier today, I did the same thing. I looked up like who did Buffalo play, and it was Lafayette, and I was like, I kind of thought the same thing you were thinking, but I was just like, usually they would. There's a way I would know it's Lafayette. I was just like, this is a different team. So I was gonna watch the highlights, and then I clicked on it, and I seen what it looked like. I was just like, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah. Do want to invite you guys. We've got some talking points and some things we're going to do, but want to invite you guys to ask questions, put them in the queue. We will certainly answer them and get to them as the show goes along. While you're here, like, comment, subscribe, do all those things that are going to help us out. Real quick, one question before we get to kind of our rundown of things that we were planning to talk about. Jarod says, should Mizzou have scored more? And you can take that two ways. Like, should they have scored more to make an impression on the playoff committee or whoever? I don't really care. Should they have scored more in that they left points on the field? Absolutely, they left points on the field. There's no doubt about that.
They left 28 points. And if you take off the field goals, I mean, those are 3 field goals, so that's 37 points. So we're talking about it could have been 80.
Well, but I mean, on some of those drives where they missed a touchdown pass, they probably ended up scoring 3 or 7 anyway.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I would have to. But
I think it could easily have been like 70-0.
Yeah. So there was a good amount of things they could have made some better plays and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think it's okay to ask a question like this when it's 51-0 as opposed to if it was just 30-0. If it was 30-0, you kind of say, well, I don't know. There's too many flaws for Murray State to be walking away with its head high saying, we held the SEC team to 30 points and Missouri was averaging, around 32 last year or something like that. So it's all right.
Yeah, but it's not 34-17 against Abilene Christian, right? It's better than that one was. It was fine. There was no doubt. Seeing some comments about the BC game. That's scoreless at the end of the first quarter, BC and Florida State, but BC's on the 4-yard line. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Talk about that game and another one and kind of what it means for the rest of Missouri's month. But we're talking about leaving points on the field. Obviously, a big reason that happened was the missed connections on the deep passes. There was one to Mookie Cooper that, to me, it looked like Mookie kind of cut his route short. And I think that was the one that Drinkwitz later said, like, hey, he had just had like a 40-yard run and we sent him long and he was out of gas. The one to Luther Burden was just overthrown. The one to Marquise Johnson was overthrown. Potentially catchable, but would have been an amazing catch. Not one you expect him to bring in. So that all leads me to this. There's been plenty of talk about Brady Cook after the game, and I understand he's the quarterback. Does Missouri need to get where they want to go? Does Brady Cook have to be better than he was last year?
So where do they want to go? They want to
go to the playoffs. To get to the playoff.
Okay, if we're talking about,
does he have to be better than he was last year?
A lot. Part of it, really, I want to say no, because playoff was last year. It was good.
They would have made it.
And they showed it from start to finish that he played well and he did what he needed to do and stuff like that. He had a good TD to interception ratio. He had the rushing touchdowns, all that stuff. So if he can play at least to that level, considering how many more playmakers they've got, I think they can get to that level. So I guess my answer would be no, as long as it's just as good as last year.
I think they can get there with the same performance they had, because like you said, they would have. Now, to do damage to, hey, we want to be one of the last 4, one of the last 2, we want to be the team that wins it. Yeah, he would have to turn it up. The entire team would have to turn it up, I think, at that point. I think and this is also, do they need a better Brady Cook than they got Thursday night against Murray State? Sure. Yeah, but like, they will get one in most cases, I think. He was fine. He wasn't bad in that game, but he can be better. Here's one of the real reasons I think last year's performance is good enough. Christopher asks, is it possible the defense is as good or better than last year? I do think it's possible. I'm not ready to say yes based on Murray State, but man, that looked like a fast, athletic defense.
I don't know if this defense can be as good at the top. Like last year's defense, you could say like last year's defense is top heavy when you got like 6. You lose 6 starters and 5 of them went to the NFL. So you could say that's more top heavy. But we're talking about balanced and depth, and I know you wrote about it in 10 Thoughts. I'm already just a little bit about the depth of the defense. You didn't notice, when there was a backup, and when I'm talking about the second string, you didn't notice if there was a second string guy at safety or at linebacker, at defensive tackle, or corner, whatever the case may be. They were easy to be able to swap in and out. And maybe in years past, you say, well, I know when such and such is on the field, or I kind of, you can kind of see just a little bit step down in production, as is most backups. That's why they're backups. So in this team, it seems like they got multiple guys where it is really plug and play. And I wonder, for defensive purposes, if there's a team that likes to run a lot of stretch or outside zone or something, do they switch up the linebackers or something like this, because they've seen them get sideline to sideline. So they have that, that type of unit. So I think they've got a good chance to be as good as last year's defense.
All right, so Brady can get you to the playoffs, but that's it. He's the Alex Smith of college quarterbacks. Well, I hate that we do this with quarterbacks. Like, nobody's saying, well, Chuck Hicks can get you to the playoffs, but he can't get you further. And I get that quarterback is more important than middle linebacker, but it's a very important position. And there are times where a quarterback goes and wins you a game, right? Like, it is fun being a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs because you know you've got a guy who can go win a game, sometimes by himself. But guess what? Sometimes he doesn't. Joe Burrow beat him, right? Like Tom Brady beat him when Tom Brady was not Tom Brady was 42, 43 years old. Like, he had a really good defense. It is not as simple. If it was just as simple as line up and the best quarterback wins, like, I mean, football would be incredibly easy to analyze. So this is going to be controversial because I'm not saying Carson Beck's a good quarterback, no question. But if Carson Beck is Missouri's quarterback and Brady Cook is Georgia's quarterback, is either team like significantly different?
Significantly different. Are we talking about if we switched them this season?
Or last season? Whatever. Brady Cook is quarterbacking Georgia for the last 15 games. Carson Beck is quarterbacking Missouri for the last 15 games. Is there a noticeable difference in those teams?
Not much, but I mean, I'm always gonna give that championship pedigree. Carson Beck has it. He's playing all these big games. He's like, I feel like that matters for something in this. But it's
yes, but also, and like, he was really good at Missouri. But my point is, I mean, he had Brock Bowers and a murderer's row defense, and and Brady's got good guys around him too. But I hate that we make it a one person. Like, we started last season and there was, well, Brady can't win more than 6 games, and it's now Brady can't win playoff games. Like, why do we do this?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. And whoever said Alex Smith, everybody craps on Alex Smith, but he was a 3-time Pro Bowler. His best year when they drafted Mahomes, that was his best season ever. I mean, like, he can play. He led them to the playoffs. I don't know how many times in a row. Like, he was a good quarterback. So I get what we're saying, like game manager and all that stuff. But I mean, first off, Alex Smith is pretty good. And I think Brady Cook is pretty good. So we've got to see. And it's a lot of overreacting over week 1.
Right. And the whole thing is like, yeah, Alex Smith never won a Super Bowl. I get it. Like, Trent Dilfer did. Alex Smith was a better quarterback than Trent Dilfer.
Also, comparing Brady Cook to Alex Smith was the number 1 overall pick. Brady Cook was a 3-star guy. You're like, you know what I mean? Like, if he's the comparison, Brady Cook has actually made a come up, really.
Right. I just think, like, if you give me, I mean, look, Caleb Williams was the best quarterback in college football the last couple of years, right? And Jaden Daniels. I'm sorry, not Jalen. But Daniels and Caleb Williams the last 2 years. What'd they win? Neither one of them would have made the playoff last year. Like, it's not as simple as
their defenses were horrendous, and I know
but that's the point.
No. Like, I get it, and I know they're in the pros now. They're making their money, but I know they're just thinking like, I wish the defenses that were played last night. I bet they were wishing like even that would have helped either one of those schools. But you're right, it's not just all in the quarterback type of thing.
Yeah, and so look, Brady Cook. Will he have to have, if Missouri gets to the playoff, would he have to have the 3 or 4 game run of his life to win a national championship? Yeah, he probably would. Like, he would have to play really well for 3 or 4 games in a row. But so would everybody around him. I mean, I've watched, Chase Daniel was unbelievable, and there were games Chase Daniel just couldn't do anything because they gave up 50 points or whatever. So it really irritates me that we reduce this to a one-person game. But talking about the defense again, like, Corey Flagg was a guy to me that I thought, I don't want to say surprised, but I think probably surprised a decent number of people who, I don't care, offense or defense, was there somebody that you would say qualified as a surprise in that game?
I don't think there was really any. No, not really. And for me, my perspective is like from all the transfer profiles through, spring ball, fall camp, like I keep having to overanalyze the same stats or look at stuff like it doesn't surprise me that Corey Flagg did what he did. Someone just said they predict that Flagg or Jacobs will replace Hicks by the A&M game. Corey Flagg on paper he's probably better than Chuck Hicks right now, but he doesn't know this. Chuck Hicks is a leader. He's been here and stuff like that, and he is a good player. I think he was second on the team with tackles for loss last year, so it's not like he's a scrub or anything by that means. But no, it doesn't surprise me that Corey Flagg was doing all those things because he showed that at Miami, and he played a lot of games for Miami and was a productive player. So not really. There wasn't no one I was just like, oh wow, I didn't see that coming, I guess.
Well, and I think less you and me who have spent 8 months previewing this team than maybe a casual fan who was watching that game, I think was probably pleasantly surprised with Flagg and Khalil Jacobs. I think probably was pleasantly surprised with Marcus Carroll because I think all the offseason talk was about Nate Noel. And then I think in that game, Marcus Carroll was a little flashier. Like he looked maybe a little better on that night, So those would be guys that I think maybe not surprises, but they came out with performances that I think probably opened a few eyes.
I think those, back to us for, previewing this season for how many months, Daniel Blood stood out just because how many times is your sixth or seventh receiver going to lead the team in receptions and receiving yards and being able to? I know it's Murray State and stuff like that, but when you have Luther and Theo and Mookie and all these guys, and he's been talked about as one of those guys in camp who's been standing out, and he took that opportunity and did what he did. I think it was 5 catches for 42 yards. That's something in itself that knows that, no matter what the situation is, your sixth or seventh receiver can come in and he used the opportunity. He did something with it. It wasn't just fall camp stuff and then you never hear about the guy again.
There was one guy to me that we saw after the game was over, which again was 5 minutes in, so that doesn't narrow it down. But after the game was well in hand, that I thought that's a guy I want to see play in more meaningful time. That's Kewan Lacey, the freshman running back. I'm not going to hand him the number 3 running back job yet, but I'd like to see him get a few more carries to see if he can get it.
This game coming up will be another good chance. I wonder, I've been thinking about this since the end of the game. So first 4 games, it was just like a perfect elevation. It feels like start at Murray State FCS, then you start kind of basically bottom tier FBS team in Buffalo. You move to the Power 4 with Boston College, and then you get into conference play, right? This seems like the game where you're still trying to see those young guys, those freshmen, who they really were high on, instead of just letting the entire team play. You kind of cut some of those guys off, aren't going to really play, but you still let some of them play. And maybe Lacey, who I think he was second on the team in rushing on Thursday night. Yeah, let a guy like him do something like that. I would also like to see Jamal Roberts because I think he just had 3 rushes, 8 yards, and a touchdown. And since he's been here, though, they've been high on him also. So, give him a little chance, but I get your point with Lacey. He stood out.
Yeah, but both those guys, I think, earned. Hopefully, they get a chance in the second half of this game, which theoretically shouldn't honestly be very close either. I wouldn't think, and should get a chance to get a longer look at both of those guys. So, want to remind you real quick again. Brought to you every week by our friend at James Carlton at James Carlton State Farm Insurance. If I can speak, carltoninsurance.net, facebook.com/Carlton Insurance. 314-961-4800 is the phone number. James just saved me a lot of money on home and auto insurance. If you get in touch with him, you tell him you heard about it on Power Mizzou. First of all, he's going to donate $25 to the NIL effort. Second, he's going to donate his time to getting you the best deal he can on insurance. Cannot recommend the process highly enough. Incredibly responsive, great team of people over there. So get in touch with them. So let's get to this because Boston College is currently up 7-0 with the ball at the Florida State 22 right now. And this ties into, and the comments kind of buried now, but somebody had asked, with Vandy beating Virginia Tech. So as we sit here at Monday at 7:20, does the month of September look different to you than it would have 3 days ago?
It does. It does. I mean,
How much?
uh, in the sense that Missouri, remember when we say sleepwalk a lot, remember how they showed up to Kentucky last year? Don't
Mhm.
do that. Don't do that. You'll end up like Virginia Tech. You'll have Diego Pavia running all over you, doing whatever he wants to do to you, and you'll be looking silly. You'll be looking like Florida State right now, letting Boston College drive all over the field at your house. Like, don't sleepwalk in these games. And these games actually mean a little bit more. And I'm gonna say it in my column tomorrow. It's just like I've been saying this whole time. Season doesn't start until after the bye week. Doesn't start till Texas A&M. Don't Missouri. Don't be those
It
guys. Don't be those
right.
guys.
It shouldn't start like Missouri should be 4-0. I think
Yeah,
Missouri
yeah,
will be favored by double digits against
yeah,
BC and Vandy.
yeah.
Those are losable games. Like Murray State was not a losable game. Buffalo is almost not a losable game. I mean, Buffalo could beat you in some situation, but it's very unlikely. BC and Vandy. So I want to take these. I want to talk about Vandy first because Vandy we've already seen play a full game. BC's a quarter and a half in. Here's what scares me after watching Vandy. They've got a guy who, on the right day, could be one of those guys to beat you by himself. Go ask Hugh Freeze. He did it there. He pretty much did it to Virginia Tech. I mean, Vandy didn't really have a whole lot else that I thought that I remember in that game, but they had
Right.
Diego Pavia at quarterback, and he threw it just enough to keep him honest, and then he just took off and ran around like a family circus cartoon, man.
That and I think like the most impressive thing is Vanderbilt had a very Vanderbilt moment. I think Clark Lee he handled that last drive in the fourth quarter when they was running down the clock to settle for the field goal. I think that was poor
Very
time
poor.
management, and so they missed the field goal. And it's really easy. Like at that moment, I'm like, oh, Vandy's gonna Vandy it again. And Diego came back and he led the scoring drive to get them to win. And so like his athleticism, some of those like plays. There was a play I just keep thinking of where he rushed and looked like he was about to go across the line of scrimmage and then kind of threw it to the side. And I think it maybe it was a touchdown, but I just remember that play like the AJ's, Swan and Wright, they weren't doing stuff like, and that's no disrespect to them, but like you can kind of tell there's something different with this guy. So yeah, on a given day, if Mizzou is not focused and looking at this how we usually think of Vanderbilt, then it could be a long day.
Vandy's going to be 3-0 when they come in here. In all likelihood, they play somebody bad this week. They play Georgia State next week. I was talking to my friend Chris Lee today, who covers Vandy, and he kind of compared watching Diego Pavia to a point guard playing quarterback, and he just like the thing he is so good at, and they pointed out on the broadcast a number of times, like he's starting to run, and you know he's going to run, but he'll do this little ball fake where he's not going to do anything with the ball, but it's just enough to make the defender react. And as soon as the defender reacts, he's going around you. Like he's dangerous. Like he shouldn't beat Missouri,
No.
but he beat Virginia Tech. I mean, like he's already got kind of a skin on his wall. He beat Auburn last year where he's proven he can do that. So Vandy, yeah, look, Vandy's going to come in here 3-0. They should go 4-0 in the non-con. Vandy is now looking at we need to pick off 2 in the SEC to get to a bowl game, which would be a pretty incredible accomplishment for Clark Lee this year. I don't think Missouri's one of them, but man, if they get that one and go 4-0, then everything changes the way we're talking about a lot of seasons.
Yeah. Still got to see a little bit more. I definitely got to see a little bit more because, like you said, I'm still thinking Mizzou wins both of these games by double digits to me. Although BC is looking good, Florida State is also not. They don't match their ranking whatsoever. So I've got to see something else from BC, before I start getting that far in it.
Yeah, so I look at BC a little bit differently than Vandy. Now, again, that might change. Obviously, I'm not watching right now. I'm getting a lot of texts that hey, BC looks pretty good. Thomas Castellanos is like he's dangerous at quarterback. He
Yeah,
can
he's
he can
he's
do some
decent.
things. Yeah, he can do some things. He's a good athlete, and he's got 102 yards passing right now. He's run a little bit. BC's up 14-0. So he can cause problems. And look, I know what people are going to say, especially people in the state of Missouri about Bill O'Brien because they remember the fake punt in 24-0. Bill O'Brien's a damn good football coach. He's going to have those guys ready, but I look at BC a little bit differently because what if tonight's just about Florida State actually isn't good? Like not they're not the number 6 team in the country or whatever. What if they're just not good?
Yeah. I mean, and my thing to that is just because I got to see it right here. Based off the first couple drives for BC, it's partially them. And BC beat Florida State last year. Like maybe they have this team's number.
No, BC
And
didn't beat Florida State last year.
they didn't.
No, because Florida State didn't lose a game till they were
Oh,
13-0.
Maybe
2 years ago, or maybe
maybe.
they pushed them. They pushed them last year, but they didn't beat them. Yeah,
Okay, right.
it was a close game. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe this is probably more about Florida State. But I've like BC can only play who's in front of them, and so if what's in front of you is currently a top 10 or 11, I know they didn't change the rankings or whatever. If it's a top 10 team on the road and you're beating them down how they are, but I think it's 14-0 right now. Like, I mean, I have to go off of what you got on your resume, right?
Right, like it's going to be okay. That'll be a top 10 win for them.
But later down the year,
if BC wins that, that's not even a top 25 win tomorrow. Florida State is out of the rankings if they lose that. Because I mean,
it should be.
Hey, week 1, you could say, hey, they went across to Ireland, tough deal, lost to a Georgia Tech team that's decent. You can make all, but you make all those excuses. Cool. But if you come back and back it up, like every coach likes to say, well, you should see the biggest improvement between week 1 and week 2, right? Well, right now, Florida State actually got worse. So if you back up losing to Georgia Tech with backing up with losing to BC, then you're not good. And that doesn't mean Boston College isn't good.
Right.
But it does mean Florida State's not good.
Yeah, I want to say both Boston College and Georgia Tech were like 7-5, 7-6 teams or whatever. Like
in that range, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you follow one loss up with another loss at home in prime time. You gotta go.
I mean, gotta go. Like legitimately, Florida State is done if they lose this game. They're done.
Oh yeah, the season is definitely.
They got nothing. They can't make the playoff. I guess they could run the table and somehow be 6-2 and win some weird tiebreaker and get in the, win the ACC championship game. But basically, they are reduced to they need the auto bid, right? Like they can't get an at-large bid after this.
They're done. And the way Miami looked, and I can't really take Clemson. I don't know what's going on with Clemson, but I've got to wait until they face someone other than Georgia. But yeah, that getting one of the at-larges or whatever it is, like that's done. They got to win the conference or it's over.
Point being, though, that like we spend 8 months talking about all this because there's like thousands of games to be played before the playoff. Maybe not thousands, but hundreds at least. We got to quit doing this who's in, who's out after. And I understand we were just doing it. Like we're part of the problem. But like who's in, who's out on the first night of week 2 or the last night of week 1, whatever you want to call it, is there's a lot of things that are going to happen. So a lot of people are asking, strength of schedule. Like, yeah, I guess it helps for Vandy to beat Virginia Tech and for Boston College to beat Florida State. I mean, it would help Missouri, like if those are bowl teams, right? If those are teams that go win 7 or 8 games, that's better than if they're 4-8. Because I think one of the things they will look at the end of the year is, okay, how many teams did you beat that have a winning record? Or how many teams did you beat that are playing in a bowl game? Right. All that. So, yeah, I think that does have, like, I think that's why I don't think it's the determining factor on whether you get in, but yeah, probably would have been a little better for Missouri if Texas A&M beat Notre Dame than vice versa, right?
Yeah, I mean, as long as they're good up until you play them, basically, then you're
Right.
fine. And if you don't play them, you would like a team like LSU to lose. That helps you. That's like
I agree. Those are the teams right around you are the ones that you
the
want.
teams
Nope,
around
not
you,
on our
and
schedule. Get them out of the
well,
way.
yeah, they're around you, and you don't play them. Go ahead and tank your season. Also, is what the Mizzou crew is thinking. So yeah,
Yeah. All right. Familiar name here in the chat. Chris
what's
checking in from
happening?
Chicago. What moves the needle more for y'all? Mizzou, Auburn, Bama, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Ole Miss winning by 50, or A&M, Florida, LSU losing the ways they did? Look, I assume you'll agree with me. There were only like 3 or 4 games I cared about in the SEC last weekend. 76-0 does nothing for me. 69-3 against Chattanooga. I did not watch 1 second of Auburn, did not watch 1 second of Alabama or Arkansas or Tennessee or Ole Miss. I have no interest in those games whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the games. I watched the Miami Florida game. I watched the LSU game, BC
A&M
game.
Notre Dame a little bit.
A&M and Notre Dame, and there was another one I kept flipping channels for. That was
I ended up getting sucked in watching Vandy, Virginia Tech almost the whole
oh
time.
yeah, Vandy, Virginia Tech. There was one going on during the Notre Dame game. I don't know why. I was watching that a little bit more than that one, but I wasn't really watching any of these Mizzou Murray States. I wasn't watching those.
I didn't even watch Mizzou Murray State. I was there and I barely watched it.
Yeah, so I definitely think the way those other teams lost, like, and Gabe, I've been thinking about this all weekend about your comment about Napier. Boy, it looked bad. It looked bad. I know you was out of town. Oh man,
Yeah. When he had it was sent to me today with a comment about Rockbridge's third string left tackle. He had a moment today. He basically said, we got to worry about football and quit worrying about what some guy who lives in his basement or his mom's basement in rural central Florida says. Look, that's step one in getting fired right there. You start worrying about what the fans are saying and you start lashing out at the fans. That's like step one of the flow chart of, are you going to have a job at the end of the year? No.
Yeah, it was looking shaky. Cam Ward and them boys was really beating them down. The Notre Dame Texas A&M game, I think it was closer than the score indicated. USC and LSU, I was like,
I mean, that was a 1-score game with 3 minutes left.
Yeah. And then last night's game was, man, the catches those guys on USC
that was a great game.
Start to finish. That was the game of the week for me. So that was great. And then I know I was thinking this during the game. I wonder how Mizzou fans feel for Blake Baker. And I'm thinking, I know a lot of them are probably saying, you could have been here enjoying this 50-0 win versus Murray State instead of in Vegas losing to USC and those guys. But it was, great game.
I mean, I'll say this for Blake. I think the LSU defense is better than it was last year. Now, I think it would be better than it was last year if I was the defensive coordinator. So I don't know if that's a credit necessarily to Blake, but there was only one direction to go with that. All right, so to kind of wrap up this part, and then we'll get to some questions in the chat and stuff. Which game at this point do you have more on upset alert, or would worry you more for Missouri, BC or Vandy?
I would like to know how the rest of this BC game finishes. If they let Florida State fall in or whatever. But we're going at this moment in time when it's like 14-zip, and I think BC is getting the ball back. BC, I like Vandy, or I like what they did versus Virginia Tech, but I got to see more. And also, it being week 1, you've got all off season to prepare for an opponent or whatever. Well, did Vandy play week 0?
No, that was Vandy's opener.
Okay, so yeah, you've got all year to prepare for a team. Sometimes you can have a good day. I'm not trying to discredit Vandy, but it could be one of those situations. So I'm not going to let one win take away everything I know about Vanderbilt in the 3 seasons I've been here. Right. So I'm going to say BC for right now.
I would say BC too, because I could see Vandy very much as a team that comes in 3-0 and kind of first road game. Like they don't really, that's not one you're counting on when you're looking at ways with, like they're at Kentucky, they have South Carolina. There are other games that they'll kind of look at and say, maybe we can, like I could see them coming in here 3-0 and just this one's, hey, house money. And it's exactly the game we've thought it was going to be for 6 months. And Missouri wins by 28 points, So I agree as of today. If you're telling me one of those is a fourth quarter game that has Missouri fans scared to death, I think BC is more likely than Vandy.
Like you said, I just think when I look at Vandy, I think of one guy. Mm-hmm. I can name a few guys on BC's crew.
I can only name one right now. I know Castellanos.
Yeah, there we go. That's the quarterback, but they actually have a former receiver from Vandy, got Jaden McGowan, he was.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the Drink last year said that was one of the best receiving cores, in the league. And so you got a receiver like him. They got good running backs as well. Like they got a couple of, and then they got Bill O'Brien. Like that's another thing that I'm getting. Like I give the head coach advantage to him. So that's why I would say BC personally.
100%. I agree on that. So look, September, like this is why a lot of our talk for 8 months about what if they go 10-2 and the schedule keeps them out. Well, first of all, they got to go 10-2. Second of all, we don't know what the hell the schedule is going to look like. Like there, who's actually pretty pissed off right now is everybody else in the ACC that was thinking, well, at least we'll have a Florida State game on our resume to help out. No, that game ain't helping you out anymore. Like if you're the ACC runner up at 10-2 and you're telling them, yeah, but we beat Florida State. So what at this point? That's not anything that's going to help you. So
someone starts saying, well, so did BC maybe, and so did Georgia Tech.
Exactly.
And then those guys are probably still going to be around where we expect 7-8 win type of teams. No, it's a wrap.
The key is you want you understand Bama's going to be very good, right? But you want the teams that maybe aren't going to be as good on your schedule or aren't expected to be as good to just win one or two more than they're supposed to. Vandy beat Virginia Tech. If they go from a 3-9 team to a 5-7 team, that's a better game for you. If BC wins tonight and they go from a 6-6 team to a 7-5 or 8-4 team, that's a better win for you, right? So that's what you want. Want to jump in the chat. I know there's some questions and appreciate all you guys being here tonight. While you're here, like, comment, share the show, do all those things. And we're going to get to some of your questions here in the last, 15, 20 minutes of the show. Mark says, would you agree that Cook gets too hyper in and out of the pocket, forcing balls that he shouldn't? With that said, Kirby Moore should run him more in early in games. So two different points. I don't know. Is that something you think about Brady?
That
he gets rattled or
definitely. Now, no, I think he's poised. I think the thing is he's still not the most accurate deep ball thrower. And so and it's the first game of the season. He's still trying to find his timing and stuff. So he definitely improved on his deep ball accuracy from 2022 to 2023. That's still something throughout the offseason Drink was still saying he has to work on and stuff like that. I go back to the game log for the last week. He had, his first 10 passes, 2-4. He has 6 completions of over 15 yards or more. So he's throwing the ball downfield and stuff like that, and you're not going to hit all of them. So I don't think that's the case, and they had great protection. So I don't think he was doing too much. Sometimes the ball just gets away from him maybe, but I think he's all right.
And I think the second part of that comment is actually important. Kirby Moore should run him more early in games to get the adrenaline out. Not in that game. Don't ever run him against Murray State. But that's part of it. I think that's part of it though, right? Like a big part of his game is the running game. So when you go into a game where you're not really using that, I think that changes the quarterback he is. If he can get outside the pocket and take off, or if you've got a designed run for him, that makes him a better player. Well, you're taking that part of your playbook voluntarily out against Murray State, because if you want to get in big trouble, go get your starting quarterback hurt in a 41-0 game.
I do remember making a comment. It's just kind of why is he not running more? He had four carries for 22 yards.
That is more than I would have had him run.
I want to say, I get the point, but also you don't want to be having to run versus Murray State. And on another thing, I also think it's week 1. You're still trying out what you can do. I'm sure they're trying new plays, new concepts, and stuff like that. You're still getting that timing down, and it's better that this is happening week 1 in a 50-point blowout and basically at 2.5 quarters of play, as opposed to week 5 in front of 100,000 at Kyle Field. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I'm not looking too hard into it.
All right, Cole asked a relevant question. Will we make it through a game without wondering if Luther Burden died? I think Luther's got some Jeremy Maclin, some Lorenzo Kane, some Jim Brown in him. Like, he just kind of gets up slow and moves like an old man and like drags himself back to the huddle. He's usually fine. I mean, I'm sure he's banged up, and I'm not saying he has a low pain tolerance, or there are just certain guys that like they get hit and you think, uh-oh, and they peel themselves up off the turf, and then the next thing you know, he just had a 60-yard touchdown.
Yeah, sometimes I just think in my head, like, what if this is a call for help? And he's just like, Coach, like, do we need to take you out the game, Lou? No, I'm okay. And the next thing you know, it's a jet sweep, 27-yard gain. It's a crosser for 35. Like, he's pretty tough, and the way his body's built and how he is, you just looking at him, he's stronger and can take more than sometimes how it looks late in these games. So
yeah, and like this is page 1 of the Jeremy Maclin at Missouri playbook. I mean, if you talk to anybody who was around practices and in games back then, like Maclin was legendary of like every play you thought the kid was something major was wrong, and then he just come back and was an All-American again. So I think Luther's probably got a little of that in him, and I know like some players do it to sandbag a little bit, right? Hey, if I look hurt, then the other team thinks I'm hurt, and then I'm going to run past. And I'm not saying Luther does that. I don't know Luther well enough to know. I'm just saying that some people do that. But I'm not really worried at all. I mean, as far as I know, Burden's healthy. I won't be surprised tomorrow if Drinkwitz tells us Brett Norfleet's not playing. Like if there's any question at all, that's fine.
Yeah, I wouldn't be. Don't force it. Don't force it. Again, more important that he's there week 4 now, or even week 3. But you don't really need it for this game. And Tyler Stevens, I know, like we kind of be like, Tyler Stevens, but I think he had a really decent game. He made a couple blocks. That's what I actually kind of noticed about Tyler Stevens before he had his couple of catches. He made a couple of decent blocks on some plays where I remember saying, like, Tyler Stevens, nice block. And I don't know if it led to something, but I was just like, you stopped a tackle for loss. And that's also a big development in his game. So that plus the offensive line, you don't have to worry as much, I guess. And all the weapons, of course, like if Brett Norfleet misses Buffalo,
Yeah. Thoughts on the new guys on the left side of the line? I guess Caden Green had a couple holding penalties.
Yeah.
I don't know. I came out of that game going, they ran the ball fairly effectively, and I'm pretty sure Brady Cook wasn't touched. So I think the line was fine.
Anytime your quarterback, well, I guess both quarterbacks, anytime their jerseys look the same as when they started the game, you did a good job. So, they do need to clean up the penalties because the line had 6 of the 7 accepted penalties, but 3 of them were from backups. I think Cameron Johnson also had a false start, but I didn't really notice the line and think like, somebody got to patch it up over there, or here's this guy letting someone blow by again,
Yeah. Somebody saying the second holding on Green wasn't holding. You can call holding on every play. I don't know. I never, in that game, I wasn't even spending my time trying to find a replay in the press box of most plays because most of them, just weren't that consequential. Who's on the helmet with Brady? It's Kirby Moore talking to Brady up until 15 seconds. Yeah.
It's Kirby. Yeah.
And I did think it was interesting that Drinkwitz said, that it was the helmet communication that kind of caused the issue there at the end of the first half, where they almost, blew 5 seconds and almost didn't get in the end zone. But it'll be interesting. Thursday night wasn't ridiculously loud, but that I was thinking about that last night when I was watching the LSU USC game, because they were saying that Miller Moss was having a little bit of a tough time hearing on the helmet because there are a lot of really loud, drunk LSU fans there, which is the only kind of LSU fan, by the way. But That's one thing that, like, they're going to still have to have some contingency plans going down to Texas A&M because Brady may not hear a thing Kirby Moore says on that Saturday.
Yeah, those I forgot what game was it, the Alabama game, where one side didn't like their communication didn't work, and so that means everybody's communication is cut off. So obviously, you're
I
still going
think
to
it
have
was
to,
Florida State, Georgia Tech that happened too. Yeah.
yeah. So you're going to have to like cut your communications away and stuff like that. So obviously, you still got to have signals and stuff on the sidelines. And Drink was just saying, and part of me, like, I guess it's a communication issue, but I don't think it was a communication issue as far as hearing what it was. I think it was a misinterpretation of what he was supposed to do. Like Drink said, he told him to go, and Brady thought that meant go and change the play call to something else. So I don't know if that has something to do with the technology more so that their wires got crossed with whatever they were trying to communicate with each other.
Fair. Do we see backups this week as much as last week?
I think you should see a good amount. I don't know if it's the entire roster basically, but I still think you'll see it. And when I'm saying backups, I'm thinking like the third string. I'm not even thinking about the guys on the 2 deep. To me, they're quasi starters basically.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to play 10 true freshmen. I think you give your starters a little bit more run in this game. First of all, because I don't think it's going to be 21-0 5 minutes in, and I don't even remember what it was at halftime. 31, 35, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Something
31 nothing maybe. Yeah. So it may not be quite that bad at halftime, but also, like, you do need to have an eye on week 3 now with Boston College. And yeah, it's good to have slow games, but like Missouri's leading defensive player last week had 23 reps. That's fine. But like, the first team offense only had 54 snaps. I'd be fine with letting them go 3/4. Hey, if you're winning 62-0, sorry, man, Buffalo be better. Like, I'd be fine with giving the starting offense 3/4 next week.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they were going to get 3/4 in the last game. So the fact they only got 2.5, they were just beating them boys down too much. And honestly, Missouri knows they don't. It's not A&M next week. It's Buffalo, so they can afford to do that and see what they got.
But like we've been talking about all night, the real games do start a week from Saturday. Like, I mean, they're legitimate football games, and you have to be ready for those. So yeah, this is a tune-up. You're going to do some things, but also at the end of this game, you want to walk out feeling pretty good about where you're at with Boston College, Vandy, A&M, and then the real things getting going. So it's still, there's tinkering this week, but you'd like to be tuned in on some things by the end of that one.
Yeah, like the overthrows and the penalties and some of the stuff like that, it becomes not a complete issue, but if that's still what's happening through Buffalo, even if they're winning by 20 points or something like that, it's going to leave a lot to be desired as far as just like, okay, I get the first week and stuff like that, but you kind of gotta see that you can do these things,
Yeah. All right, to kind of wrap it up here, guys. Boston College right now 14-3 on Florida State. Florida State does have the ball. I don't know. Is Billy Napier on the hottest seat in the state of Florida or not?
Yes.
I think Mike Norvell's fine. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I had to think about it for a second. Like, oh yeah, it's burning up over there where he's at.
Yeah. I think Mike Norvell's fine, but whoop, it's not going to be a fun week to be in Tallahassee if that one doesn't turn around. So I know everybody's had one eye on that, but I appreciate you guys hanging out here with us. We're gonna let you see the second half. I later this week on our opponent preview show, I'm actually going to be talking to Buffalo Athletic Director Mark Allnut, who obviously played football here, got his start in the athletic department here. So that's the route we're going with this week's opponent preview show. Jarod and I will be back with you from the press box at Memorial Stadium sometime Saturday night, about an hour earlier than we were last Saturday night because the game starts at 6:00. It's on. Look, this is my public service announcement for the week, guys. The game is on ESPN Plus / SEC Network Plus. You are going to need the ESPN app. That means you're going to need to stream. You're going to watch on your phone. Figure it out. I don't know how. I can't get it on your TV for you, but I'm telling you that's where it is. If you go to ESPN or SEC Network on your television, it is not going to be on there. You're going to need the ESPN app to watch this game, or ESPN.com/watch on your computer, whatever. It is Monday night at 7:50. That gives you 118 hours to figure out how to watch ESPN Plus. So when you post at 5:42 on Saturday night, I don't know how to get ESPN Plus, I am not going to feel bad for you, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it. You've got 118 hours. Go get ESPN Plus. You know what? Call James Carlton. He knows how to get ESPN Plus. Get insurance from James. Get a quote from him. You can donate $25, and then tell James that I told you to ask him. I don't understand how to find football games. Tell me how to find ESPN Plus, James. James Carlton going to hook you up. 314-961-4800. Call James Carlton to figure out how to watch ESPN Plus and get.
We love a good segue. We love good.
There you go.
Loved it. Loved it.
That feels like a great way to end it. We'll talk to you guys next time. Have a good evening.